In 1974, a man named Ted Benna was working as a benefits consultant in Philadelphia when he found a loophole in a new piece of tax legislation called the Revenue Act. The loophole allowed employers to let workers put pre-tax money into investment accounts. Benna called it a 401k, after the subsection of the tax code where he found it. He thought he was building a savings tool for ordinary workers. What he actually built was the most profitable product distribution channel in the history of the financial services industry, because attached to every single 401k, every IRA, every brokerage account that followed, was a fee, a small, quiet, percentage-based fee that most people have never read, never calculated, and never noticed draining their retirement account year after year after year. Here's the thing. The fee isn't illegal. It isn't hidden in the criminal sense. It is disclosed, buried in a prospectus that averages 200 pages long, written in language that requires a securities law degree to parse. The financial industry has spent 50 years perfecting the art of transparency that nobody can actually see. And in those 50 years, while your advisor sent you quarterly reports with charts and smiling fonts, the fee quietly did its work, compounded, silently, against you. I'm Susan, and I've spent years pulling apart the actual mechanics of how wealth is transferred, not built, inside the traditional financial advisory model. By the end of this video, you're going to understand the real dollar cost of a 1% advisory fee over a working lifetime, and the number is going to make you want to sit down. We're going to dig into the legal distinction between a fiduciary and a broker, a distinction worth potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars to you personally that your current advisor may have never mentioned. I'll show you the specific math on how fee structures eat retirement accounts, using real scenarios with exact dollar amounts. And I'll give you a framework called the Fee Transparency Audit, so you know exactly what you're paying and whether you're getting anything close to what it costs. If you've ever handed your money to a professional and trusted that they were working in your best interest, and you're not completely sure that's legally true, subscribe. This video is for you. Think of your investment portfolio as a garden. Left alone with sun and water, meaning time and compound returns, it grows. Every year it produces more than the year before because last year's growth becomes this year's soil. Now imagine someone charges you 1% of everything in the garden every single year just for watching it. Not for planting, not for watering, just for standing near it with a clipboard. At first, that sounds reasonable. 1% is almost nothing, but here's what that gardener is actually taking. They're not taking 1% of your gains, they're taking 1% of your entire garden, the plants, the soil, the roots, the seeds that haven't grown yet. And they take it whether the garden grows or shrinks, whether it's a good year or a drought. Every year, rain or shine. Their fee is not tied to your outcome, it is tied to your balance. That distinction is the most important sentence in this video. Let's go back to 1940. A man named Benjamin Graham, widely considered the father of modern investing, the man who taught Warren Buffett, wrote a book called Security Analysis. In it, he made an observation that the financial industry has spent 80 years trying to make people forget. He wrote, paraphrasing closely, that the typical portfolio manager adds little to no measurable value above a passive index strategy, and that the fees charged for active management represent a systematic transfer of wealth from clients to managers. Graham wrote this in 1940. Vanguard founder John Bogle built an entire company on this principle in 1975, when he launched the first index fund available to retail investors. By 2024, roughly 57% of U.S. equity fund assets were in passive index funds. The data has been available, replicated, and confirmed for 80 years. The average actively managed fund underperforms its benchmark index after fees in roughly 85 to 90% of cases over any 10-year period. This is not a fringe view. This is the consensus of academic financial research. It is also the thing your full-service financial advisor will never, ever volunteer to you at your annual review. Now, here's the math, and I want you to stay with me on this because the numbers get large fast. You are 30 years old. You have $50,000 invested today, and you contribute $1,000 a month for the next 35 years until you're 65. Your portfolio earns 8% annually, a conservative estimate for a diversified equity index portfolio over a long time horizon. With zero fees, your ending balance at 65 is approximately $2,140,000. Now you hire a financial advisor who charges 1% annually. 1%. The fee sounds trivial. Here is what it actually costs you. The same portfolio, same contributions, same 8% gross return, minus a 1% annual management fee, meaning your net return is now 7%, produces approximately $1,620,000 at 65. The difference? $520,000. Your advisor charged you $520,000 over 35 years for managing a portfolio that, according to the overwhelming weight of evidence, would have performed as well or better if you'd put it in a low-cost index fund and ignored it. That $520,000 is not a fee, it is a wealth transfer from your retirement account to theirs. And it compounds, meaning the cost of the fee is not $520,000 in today's dollars. It is $520,000 in future dollars, representing decades of compounding returns you will never receive. Now make it 1.5%, which is closer to the average all-in cost for a full-service advisor when you factor in advisory fees, fund expense ratios, and transaction costs. At 1.5% annually, your ending balance drops to approximately $1,440,000. The gap versus no fee is now $700,000. You paid $700,000 for someone to watch your garden, and statistically speaking, based on 80 years of peer-reviewed financial research, they did not outperform the alternative of you doing nothing. Here's the part that makes this worse. There are two types of financial professionals in America, and most people don't know they exist as separate categories. The first is a fiduciary. A fiduciary is legally required to act in your best interest at all times, full stop. If a fiduciary recommends a product, they are legally obligated to recommend the best available option for you, not the one that pays them the highest commission. Fee-only registered investment advisors are fiduciaries. The second type is a broker, also called a registered representative. A broker operates under a different legal standard called the suitability standard. Under suitability, a broker is only required to recommend products that are suitable for your general situation, not necessarily the best option. A product that pays your broker a 5% commission can be recommended to you under the suitability standard as long as it's not wildly inappropriate for your age and risk profile. It does not need to be better than the cheaper alternative, it just needs to not be obviously wrong for you. The Department of Labor tried to impose a fiduciary standard on all retirement account advisors in 2016. The financial industry spent approximately $300 million lobbying against it. They won. The rule was largely rolled back. The distinction remains. And most people sitting across from a financial professional have no idea which type of person they're talking to or what legal standard governs the advice they're receiving. Here's who wins from the confusion. In 2015, the Obama administration's Council of Economic Advisors estimated that conflicted financial advice, meaning advice shaped by the advisor's compensation rather than the client's best interest, costs American retirement savers approximately $17 billion per year. $17 billion annually, quietly, in fees and underperforming products that a fiduciary would never have recommended. The brokerage firms, the insurance companies selling annuities with high embedded fees, the mutual fund companies paying distribution commissions, these are the entities that lobbied against the fiduciary rule. They won that lobbying fight. They collect the $17 billion, and the client sitting across from their friendly advisor in a nice office with a nice handshake doesn't know any of this is happening. Picture this. You walk into your annual portfolio review. Your advisor, let's call him Greg, has a printed report. There are graphs. The graphs go up and to the right because it's been a decent year and most things go up in decent years. Greg is wearing a nice suit. His desk has family photos on it. He asks about your kids. He already knows their names because he has them written down. He tells you your portfolio is up 9.2% this year. You feel good. What Greg does not tell you is that the S&P 500 index was up 11.4% this year. He does not tell you that the funds he has you in carry a blended expense ratio of 0.8% and his advisory fee is 1%, bringing your all-in cost to 1.8% annually. He does not tell you that a 3-fund portfolio of Vanguard index funds with an average expense ratio of 0.05% would have cost you 1.75% less per year and almost certainly outperformed your current holdings over any 10-year period. He does not tell you these things because he is not legally required to. He tells you about your kids, you shake hands, you leave feeling taken care of. This happens in some variation approximately 300 million times a year across America. Let me show you 2 people. Meet Patricia and her brother-in-law, Doug. Both are 40. Both have $200,000 in retirement savings. Both plan to retire at 65. Patricia's money is with a full-service advisor charging 1.2% annually invested in a mix of actively managed funds with a blended expense ratio of 0.7%. Her total all-in cost, 1.9% per year. Doug, after reading a Bogle book on a flight to Denver in 2019, moved everything to a 3-fund Vanguard portfolio with an average expense ratio of 0.05%. He set up automatic monthly contributions and has not logged into the account since March of 2022. His all-in cost, 0.05% year. 25 years later, Patricia's advisor produced average gross returns of 7.8% annually, which is a solid result for an active manager. Net of her 1.9% in fees, her effective return is 5.9%. Her $200,000 has grown to approximately $830,000. Doug's 3-fund portfolio produced 7.5% average annual returns, slightly lower gross because indexes are slightly less exciting than active management in good years. Net of 0.05%, his effective return is 7.45%. His $200,000 has grown to approximately $1,220,000. Doug outperformed Patricia by $390,000. Doug did it by doing almost nothing. He read 1 book, made 1 decision, and then went back to his regular life. Patricia had quarterly calls, annual reviews, a dedicated advisor, professional guidance, and ended up with $390,000 less. The math isn't cruel, it's just compounding. It compounds fees just as faithfully as it compounds returns. The emotional punchline for Patricia isn't the $390,000. It's that she felt responsible and looked after for 25 years. She trusted someone. She delegated a thing that felt complicated to someone who seemed qualified. She did everything society tells you a responsible adult does with money. And she was quietly, legally, systematically charged for a service that made her poorer than doing nothing would have. Here's your framework. The fee transparency audit. 4 steps you can do this week. Step 1. Find out exactly what you are paying. Call your advisor, your 401k provider, or log into your brokerage account and locate something called the expense ratio for every fund you hold. Then add the advisory fee if you have one. Add them together. That is your total annual drag on returns. Most people who do this for the first time discover they are paying between 1% and 2.5% per year and had no idea. Step 2. Calculate the 35-year cost of that fee using a compound interest calculator. Take your current balance, assume 8% gross returns, subtract your fee percentage, run it out 35 years. Then run it again with a 0.05% fee. The difference is the price you are currently paying for your current setup. Put a real dollar amount on it. Step 3. Find out whether your advisor is a fiduciary. Ask them directly, are you a fiduciary at all times for all recommendations you make to me? The answer should be yes. If they hedge, if they say, "it depends," if they pivot to talking about their credentials instead of answering the question, you have your answer. Step 4. Benchmark your portfolio. Compare your last 5 years of returns against a simple 3-fund index portfolio, a total U.S. market fund, a total international fund, and a bond fund in age-appropriate proportions. If your advisor's active approach has not meaningfully outperformed that benchmark after fees, you are paying for underperformance. That is useful information to have. None of this means financial advisors are useless. For complex situations, estate planning, tax optimization, business ownership, inheritance management, a genuine fiduciary advisor can earn their fee many times over. The problem is that millions of people with straightforward financial situations, a 401k, an IRA, maybe a taxable brokerage account, are paying full-service active management fees for a service that, for their situation, adds no measurable value, and they don't know it because the system is not designed to tell them. Here are your 3 takeaways. 1. The 1% advisory fee is not 1% of your returns. It is 1% of your entire balance every year compounded against you for decades. On a typical retirement timeline, that fee costs the average investor between $400,000 and $700,000 in final wealth. Calculate your actual number this week. The math will do the convincing. 2. Ask your advisor, in writing if necessary, whether they are a fiduciary at all times. If they are not, every product recommendation they make may be shaped by their compensation, not your outcome. This is legal. It is also something you deserve to know before your next annual review. 3. Passive index investing with low-cost funds has outperformed the average active manager after fees in 85% to 90% of cases over any 10-year period. This is not opinion. This is 80 years of replicated academic research. You do not have to act on it, but you should know it before deciding whether to pay someone not to do it. The system is rigged, but it's rigged in a predictable way. Once you understand that fee structures compound against you just as faithfully as returns compound for you, and that the legal framework governing much of the financial advisory industry does not require the person across the desk to optimize for your outcome, you stop being a passive participant in your own financial life. You ask the questions, you run the numbers, you stop paying $700,000 for a handshake and a graph that goes up and to the right in the good years. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. The people retiring comfortably aren't always the ones with the most sophisticated portfolios. They're often the ones with the most boring ones. 3 funds, low fees, automatic contributions, left alone for decades. Drop a comment and tell me, do you know what your all-in fee is right now? Most people don't. Let's find out.